always think, but how is it possible that we are collectively not doing better, right? Because we know many of the answers to these issues, and we should be able to move faster, and we know what we have to do. So but at the same time, it's encouraging. You were also mentioning that we can also show that it's possible to make change. So we also have to keep up somehow the trust in that. From the Council of Europe, you mentioned that gender-based violence relies on several pillars, so prevention, protection, prosecution, and also other policies. And I wanted to mention, before getting into the sort of growth plan part, just at the EU level, there were some important landmarks last year taking place. One was, of course, the accession of the EU to the Istanbul Convention, which was just about a year ago. And in addition, in May 24, we adopted the EU directive on combating violence against women and domestic violence. And this is the first time that there is such a piece of legislation specifically addressing these issues at EU level. Of course, EU member states are, each of them in different ways, tackling these issues, but I think it's very important, not only symbolically at the EU level as well, to have this step taken. And also concretely, this directive is important because it's binding on all the member states. It does include the area of cyber violence, for example, which is not covered in the Istanbul Convention in that way. It also specifies for some areas of violence, such as genital mutilation, minimum sentences and penalties, just to mention a few things. It's a very comprehensive directive. It's 36 pages of small print, but I think it's very important because it really underlines the specific characteristics of violence against women and domestic violence, and it also puts out there what is important to cater, what are the specific needs that therefore need to be addressed to protect the victims of such violence, well, protection and other things. So I won't say more about that, but I think it's quite encouraging nevertheless. So if I should say something about the growth plan, so the EU growth plan for the Western Balkans, new initiative of last year that has taken a lot of attention. Each of the Western Balkan countries have been working on putting in place a reform agenda. Also Montenegro, this has been adopted and it has also been approved at the EU level. It's an interesting initiative because it focuses on socioeconomic reforms in different areas, and it is different from other things that we do because it's really focusing on the results, not only the processes of getting somewhere, but the focus is on what is it that is going to be achieved and when. And we're very happy that indeed the prevention and fight against gender-based violence got a place in Montenegro's reform agenda. And specifically, in our discussions with the Montenegrin government, we agreed three things. First was that the Supreme State's prosecutor would put in place and monitor standard operating procedures for the prosecution as regards the handling of sexual and gender-based violence cases, in line with relevant articles of the Istanbul Convention and the EU Directive on Victim Protection. And I would like to congratulate you for having already issued the binding guidelines for all prosecutors dealing with the cases of gender-based violence in Montenegro. And of course, we're now looking forward also to the monitoring of these. Then secondly, Montenegro is going to ensure that its unique database on domestic violence is better used and that it includes many more cases of domestic violence cases reported to the police or the social welfare offices. And that too will be an important tool to respond adequately to reports of violence. And finally, we also agreed that Montenegro will put in place 3 crisis centers for victims of sexual violence, in line again with the standards of the Istanbul Conventions. And this will indeed provide these integrated services, health, legal, and psychological services for victims. Again, this is something that helps to also get to the possibilities to secure also justice eventually for the victims. The reform agenda, so these are the ones, the measures that very specifically have to do with gender-based violence, but there are also other things. I think there's quite a good mainstreaming of gender issues in this growth plan, because it's a socio-economic agenda. It focuses on economic reforms, but there is also a lot on economic empowerment of women by, for example, putting in place measures that will improve the possibilities for women to also get onto the labor market, earn their salaries, such as having more places of childcare, having better services of elderly or other persons that often are cared for by women, meaning they cannot go out and work. Better reducing shifts in school, again, something that affects the ability of mainly women to be on the labor market. So these are sort of a wide set of measures that are actually included in there, and that will be rewarded financially if they are carried out. And it's a short time frame of only 3 years. So there's a lot of work to be done. And then this complements other things we do, such as financing civil society organizations or working with service with the ministers of social affairs and so on.